Hello and welcome to Cigar and Bar. Today we are going to be doing an episode of Cocktail Corner. We're going to be working on a cocktail that I've invented for today. Today is the July 4th weekend, 2021. It is the 4th of July celebratory weekend in America. It is also, among other things, not notably, but it is also the 100th anniversary of the day that the photo was taken at the end of the movie The Shining, the Stanley Kubrick movie The Shining, starring Danny Lloyd, Shelley Duvall, and of course Jack Nicholson. And famously at the end of the movie, the camera zooms in on a picture which shows that Jack Nicholson was there in 1921. And that was 100 years to the day, allegedly, ago today. So I have come up with a cocktail that is a July 4th, 1921, and that's what we're going to work on here today. Now, the movie The Shining, it's a classic. It's one of my favorite classic horror films. It's certainly my favorite Kubrick film. It has a lot of good things going for it. That is not to say that in today's society we cannot hold it to account for some of the less pleasant aspects of the film. I'm talking about specifically some of the racial slurs used against people of color. Some of the off-screen inappropriate behavior would be some of the downright abusive treatment that Shelley Duvall received when she was on screen. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make a cocktail and celebrate this movie without talking about some of the reasons why it could have been better, some of the flaws that it had, and I think that's fair. So how do you even approach a cocktail about the movie The Shining? Well, there's a couple of elements of alcohol in the film. Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, is a recovering alcoholic, and he talks about how he's been 5 months on the wagon. Now, Shelley Duvall also says a month before that, before they get to the hotel, that he's been 5 months sober. But maybe that meant that he had a drink when she wasn't looking, sometime a month after she thought that he stopped. Also of note is that Jack Nicholson says that it was 3 years ago was the incident in which he had injured his son, in which he swore off alcohol. And yet they both corroborate that it's 5 months since he had a drink. So there's a relapse in there that the movie isn't talking about. As far as alcohol is concerned, there are very few references to alcohol. Jack gets served some Jack Daniels, so that's going to be in our cocktail today. Another alcohol that's mentioned is Bones Advocaat, which is an egg-based Dutch liqueur, which is not going to go in this drink. It could, but it could be in a drink that we could devise for it, something else from this movie, but maybe at a later point down the road I will come up with one or two more Shining-themed cocktails. The other big one that is alluded to, but not actually in the film, is the idea of rum, because red rum is such a popular byline of the film. But we're going to skip rum today as well, as I just wanted to work on something that was kind of a 1920s theme. Not that rum isn't 1920s appropriate, but I looked at a couple of Prohibition-era cocktails, which would have been what they were serving at the Overlook in 1921. And I was looking at what would have gone in there, and there were a couple of things that came to mind, and we're gonna taste those now. I tried this recipe with one and the other, and then I tried it with both balanced, and anyways, let's just see what we got. A period-appropriate Italian Amaro bitter will be the Fernet Branca. So we have some Fernet Branca here today, and I'm just going to give you some brief tasting notes on the Fernet Branca. Smells like chocolate. But more than chocolate, it smells like chocolate Listerine. There's a bit of a mint flavor in there that isn't really a mint. It's like a mouthwashy kind of mint that's in there. And that comes in with a real bitter candy cane kick. So there is mint. There's definitely a mint flavor. So we're going to move on to the other bitterant that I was wanting to work with, which is the Angostura. Angostura bitters. This is a classic bar ingredient. If you've never tried it, look it up. If you've never had it in a cocktail, I'd be surprised if you hadn't had it in a cocktail. The first thing I had to do with this, particularly because it's a bitters heavy drink, was pull out the little stopper on the top that only allows you to dash it, because we're going to be putting a lot more than a dash in today's cocktail. And important to do between tasting is a little bit of palate cleansing, so I'm going to have some water. Now on to the Angostura. This has noses of spice. Cinnamon and baking spice and orange. And it's just floral. It tastes like orange blossom and fresh baked cinnamon buns. And it is great. It lacks the harsh bitterness of the Fernet Branca, but there's definitely bitterness there. It's much more palatable. Okay, so let's move on to the cocktail and what's actually going to go in it. Got my shaker here. For starters, we're going to work with a half an ounce of Angostura bitters. Then we're going to move on to a quarter ounce of Fernet Branca. Followed by a half an ounce of simple syrup. And we're also going to do a quarter ounce of lemon juice, fresh squeezed. Now you can do a lemon in one of these citrus squeezers, or you can do a lemon on a pedestal juicer. Either one works. This lemon is just small enough that I can do it in here comfortably. And finally, because it's Jack Torrance's drink of choice, we're going to add 1 ounce of Jack Daniels. Now, I will confess that over the years, I have become heavily influenced by the YouTube channel of How to Drink. I'm going to be putting up his details there, so you can have a look at his channel. And How to Drink has a very specific way of cracking his ice, and I've fallen into that pattern as well. So what we're going to do today for ice is 1 whole cube and 1 cracked cube. And he swears by this concept that it gives you just enough agitation and aeration. I can't crack it the same way you can, Greg. Maybe in time. Maybe we get together, you teach me, so I don't know. So let's shake this. If you've never shaken with a Boston shaker before, it's important to start off gently because these two halves get sealed shut by the coldness of the liquid, so it creates a vacuum seal. So you start off with a gentle shake, and then you can start to really give it to it. I've got a lovely red liquid in there. Now the other thing that this calls for is I thought it was for a July 4th ball, would be celebratory. And what says celebratory better than sparkling wine? Today we're going to be using the Martini Asti sparkling wine, one of my go-tos for a wine that is not meant for just for sipping on or for really tasting. This is a nice all-purpose sparkling wine. And do be careful. I'm going to say this as I should with every safety warning. When you're taking the cage off a bottle of champagne or a bottle of sparkling wine, I have had it go off with the cage. So always make sure you've got a firm hand over the cork, and always make sure it's not pointing at anything that you don't want it to hit. So there is our sparkling wine. Let's get this thing served up. I'm going to serve this today in a champagne saucer. I'm going to serve it double strained so it's nice and clean. And I'm going to serve that with a 1 ounce float of sparkling wine sitting on the top. And we're going to garnish that with a little pull of lemon here. I want to remind viewers that I do have a bird. So that's my beautiful cockatiel tango singing away in the background there. One of these days I will do a Bird of Paradise cocktail, and she will be the guest of honor. So there we have it, a July 4th, 1921, and let's give it a taste. You hit with that aroma of the lemon immediately. It's nutty. It's sweet. I workshopped this without the sweet sparkling wine, and it just tasted too bitter. But that little bit of sparkling wine sweetness on the top rounds out the flavor. So it's not just there thematically, it's not just there to give you a nice little bit of a head on the top there. It really does provide a good flavor. So if you're going to substitute with a different sparkling wine, make sure it's fairly sweet. I'll try to put in the video notes what the actual grams of sugar are in this particular sparkling wine, so you know you can get something comparable. At first you smell that lemon. It's sweet and cinnamony, and you get a hint of that mint from the Fernet Branca, and then it rounds out with the sweet nuttiness of the Jack Daniels. It's still there, it pulls through. I was careful to make sure I had enough Jack Daniels in there that it wouldn't completely drown out. Because at first it was just bitter. It was all bitter with Jack Daniels in there for no reason. So you really did need to moderate how much bitterness you put in there, although it does remind me of some of the earlier cocktails, some of the Prohibition cocktails I've had. Mostly what comes to mind is the Hanky Panky, because the Hanky Panky also has Fernet Branca in it, so that's neither here nor there. It's probably not because of the taste specifically, but yeah, that is nice. It is chilled, it is bracing in that it does have a complex bitter flavor. I'd say the forefront of this flavor is definitely the Angostura, so I'm glad that that one shines through a little bit more than the Fernet Branca, but the Fernet Branca all on its own as the showpiece flavor would be a little too much for my palate. Very nice, very good. So that's what we've done today for the anniversary of the photo at the end of The Shining. This is the July 4th, 1921 cocktail. I've got a couple other ideas for Shining-themed cocktails on the back burner. If you'd like to see them, please comment below, and I'll try to get to those ones in time. If you have any recommendations for how I might improve this cocktail, please give it a try and let me know what you would have done differently. Otherwise, I'll be posting as many notes as I can about this in the comments, and I will see you next time in Cocktail Corner. Hopefully we make something delicious. Cheers. In the Fernet Branca. This happens. This is my life. I have a bird.